You gonna put a mop on the end of it, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So
Try that hat if it'll do something. I don't know.
yeah, let's try it. All right.
Lay it over it, I guess.
It might keep it from
Freezing anyway. Yeah.
yeah, might keep it from recording. Very might sound muffled in the recording too.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but you can always amplify it too.
Yeah.
All right, stick this case in the back. Get your cream out, and I got cookies today, Jim.
Okay. All right.
Better treat than we've had in the last few weeks.
Thank you.
Let's see, get the plunger
Well,
going.
Mark came over, or not Mark, I mean Dale, not Mark. Dale and I were fixing our boiler. We had to replace the expansion tank in there,
Oh yeah.
and we bypassed the mixing valve that warms the water going to the toilet bowls
Yeah.
at the recommendation of the central plumbing. So just skip that. You don't need that. They don't have them anymore. So but it was quite a process. We had to make about 5 or 6 trips to the
Oh
plumbing
boy.
shop. Every time you take something, we got to have this, got to have that.
Those
Those
got
are good.
raisins and chocolate chip.
Which
on
ones are
They're-
no raisins,
them. You don't want raisins?
if I can avoid them?
I think you're out of luck.
I thought you said they. Oh, I thought we had 2 kinds. Well, I can live with them.
You can probably pull them out.
No, they're all right.
So what part of Florida is Amy and them going to?
I think it's near Central Florida. She told me the name of the town, but I can't think what it was. But it's somewhere up in the middle of it, I think.
What city is he trying to serve? Orlando?
I don't know. They moved down here to get away from all the wild politics on the West Coast, but now they got to deal with the alligators and boa constrictors and stuff like that.
Well, if the Alaska people in them don't melt, they'll be fine. It's a good place down there.
Hotter than blazes.
Oh boy. Yep.
First few times they go through a hurricane or tornado, I bet they wonder what made them go there.
That's the truth. Yeah, I mean, one of the jobs I had before I came up here was checking those houses after those hurricanes.
Mm-hmm. They got a big flooding one going up the coast over there now.
Big what? Oh yeah.
Just went past Carolinas, heading up north.
Everywhere you go, there's something.
Mm-hmm. Well, we live in a world that's been seriously damaged. Not destroyed, but really wounded. Thankfully, it will get healed one of these days. I just read the last couple of chapters of Zechariah again today. That is an amazing book. Read that, lady?
Not lately.
Get your book and read the last 12, 13, and 14.
Read the last few verses
No, the last 3 chapters.
right now.
Why not?
Okay.
Or you wait 5 minutes and then read. That was a good cookie.
You want another?
Yeah. Raisins and all.
Despite the raisins. They're
Thank you.
big too, aren't they?
Yeah, whoops. That one's coming apart pretty bad.
That one's coming with 2.
I made about 14 pieces out of it.
I'll keep it available for you.
Yeah. When you're reading Zechariah, like every other book, you want to think about what does the name mean. So what's Zechariah mean?
Let me look. I might even have it written down, but I don't recall exactly. Something from God.
Yeah, ends in Yah, that's God.
Mm-hmm.
Begins with Zechariah.
It's not gift from.
No?
Remember by?
Mm-hmm. To remember. Zechariah means God has remembered. So then you have to think, well, what is it he remembered?
His people?
Yeah, and his covenant. Because I will never forget my covenant with Israel. So what does his covenant with Israel come up to amount to?
Yeshua?
I mean, what's the covenant? What is it? He made an agreement with Israel.
I'll be your God and you'll be my people.
Yeah, and if he remembers his covenant, what does that do?
It remembers the people. Protects them and...
Well, it guarantees the covenant, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It said, my covenant will never fail. So whatever it has to say is an absolute, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, the enemy, what does Iran say about Israel, for example?
Push them to the sea. Let's wipe them out.
We're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. Iran said that. Syria has said that. Egypt has said that.
Yeah.
Jordan has said that. Turkey has said that. And many in the American administration would say that.
Yeah.
So the world's view of Israel is, we don't care what your covenant with God says, we are going to destroy you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says, he that sits in the heavens laughs. What does that tell you?
Doesn't matter what the people in the world say.
I can picture God saying, look at what those fools have to say. They have no idea what they're saying. Or the terrible end they're coming to. Now you read Zechariah 12, 13, and 14. Amazing book.
It's all in one opening.
Mm-hmm.
An oracle. The word of the Lord.
Well, just a minute. What's an oracle?
Something that is seen. A vision that is seen.
Yeah, and I mean, what would you describe when somebody says they're going to read an oracle? What are you talking about when you say an oracle?
Some kind of a prophetic word.
And where would it come from?
From the Lord. That's
Yeah,
what it says, the word of the Lord.
All right, now read it.
The word of the Lord concerning Israel.
Okay, right away. If you didn't read any more, then what is Zechariah about?
About Israel.
It's not just about Israel, it's about what does the Lord say about Israel, isn't it? And he said, I will never forget my covenant with Israel. So right away, if you didn't read anything more, if you stop right there, what would you say about the destiny of Israel? Just from what you just read.
They're in the Lord's hands.
And what does their destiny look like?
I like the picture that is painted in the latter parts of Isaiah. All the nations of the earth are going to come and pour their wealth upon Israel.
Yeah. So their future, their destiny is beyond imagination how wonderful it is, wouldn't you say? And
yeah.
what's wonderful about it is that it's the Lord's guarantee. So when the Lord guarantees something that he says is his people, puts them in a position so vastly superior to anything that the world had ever imagined. I told some Jews when I was over there, you guys have a destiny you can't even imagine how great it is. You need to really be looking to God and learn what it's about, because it's beyond imagination how great it is. So go ahead, read a while.
A declaration of the Lord who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundations of the earth.
Okay, just a minute before you go any further. Why do you need to read that? I mean, what's that got to do with anything?
That's establishing authority, establishing a history for this God, giving you his resume.
Human builders say, we built that store right there. Quite a building, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is about the one who stretched out the heavens.
Yeah.
How does that compare with the world's builders? Whatever the world has ever done, it wouldn't even light a candle to compared to what God has done, right?
Right.
So go on now.
Stretched out the heavens, laid the foundation of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. Look, I will make Jerusalem a cup that causes staggering for the peoples who surround the city. The siege against Jerusalem will also involve Judah. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who try to lift it will injure themselves severely when all the nations of the earth gather against her.
Okay, stop right there. Israel is surrounded by 29 nations that have declared they want to destroy him. 29 nations surrounding Israel. Practically all of Africa, most of the Middle East, Europe, Russia, China. So what their intent is, we are going to destroy Israel. That's what they intend to do, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In their plan, we are going to do that. But the Lord says, I've got a plan also about all those who want to come against it. And what's he say?
Jerusalem will be like a heavy stone that'll crush them.
Yeah. Go ahead now, read some more.
On that day.
That day, that's an interesting phrase.
Yeah. This is the Lord's declaration. I will strike every horse with panic and its riders with madness. I will keep a watchful eye on the house of Judah, but strike all the horses of the nations with blindness.
Okay, now horses. What's he got against horses?
Nothing per se, but the symbology of the old covenant, Old Testament, the horses were a symbol of trusting in something besides the Lord.
Or they represent military force.
Yeah.
They were the battle wagons of the old times. Now they use trucks and jeeps and tanks and things like that, aircraft. But in the old days it was horses. So if the horses of the enemy nations get struck down with blindness and madness, what happens to their attack plans?
They can't carry them out.
Yeah. It's just, go ahead now.
Okay. Then each of the leaders of Judah will think to himself, the residents of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts, their God. On that day,
Hold on.
yeah. Then each of the leaders of Judah will think to himself,
They'll think. What are they going to think?
that the residents of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts, their God.
I don't think you read it, but try it again.
Then
They are going to think something. What are they going to think?
the residents of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts, their God.
That sentence makes no sense, whatever. Did you read it right?
Yeah, I read just what the words are. But this is this is the Holman translation.
The residents of Judah will think what? What will they think?
Well, that's what I read. That the residents of Jerusalem are my strength through the Lord of hosts, their God. What's your version say?
I don't know. I don't have it. It's in back.
12.
Reach back there and grab it. It's
25.
right behind the seat. I gotta find a place to have my cup. Let's see that.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it partially sunny or partially cloudy today?
Yes. Like saying, is your cup half empty or half full?
So it's 12:05 we're looking at.
You're looking at, but I'm not. Okay. And by the way, he said that day. What day?
Well, is it the day of the Lord that they always talk about?
Well,
Or is it the day that all this is going to come to pass?
you go back to verse 2. I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup, and all the surrounding people are going to be really means staggering around like they don't know where to walk, right?
Right.
Judah will be besieged, as well as Jerusalem. On that day, the day that they attack, right? They're going to attack Jerusalem. And on that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered together, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. All who try to move it will injure themselves. And on that day, I'll strike every horse with panic and his riders with madness. Or you're reading. Then he says, then the clans of Judah will say in their hearts. By the way, if they say something in their hearts, what does that mean?
It's not something that is actually happening. It's just what they hope to be true or what they think is true.
It may not even be. It says they will say in their hearts. So if you say something with your voice out loud, everybody can hear it. But if you say it in your hearts, it just comes from within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what you believe, what you understand. The people that will say in their hearts, the people of Jerusalem are strong because the Lord Almighty is their God. So what they're going to say, the people of Judah are strong. Why?
Because the Lord is with them.
Yes. So what are they doing when they say that?
Well, it's the leaders of Judah. So they're trusting in God.
Yes, and they're accrediting their strength with God.
Right.
So have you ever read, God the Lord is my strength? That's in Psalms, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
So he says, in that day, the day that the enemy comes after Jerusalem. Now, right now, we hear in the news every day, we're going to wipe you off the earth. We are going to do it. We are going to wipe you off the earth. We are going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when are you going to do it? When are you going to? Are they doing anything about it? They say we are going to wipe you off. What are they doing about it right now?
They're talking about it and planning.
It's all
it,
talk, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But there will come a day when they will actually attack.
Yes. That's
And
for sure.
on that day, the day they actually attack, he says, the Lord says, I'm going to have my eye over Judah. I'll blind their horses. In other words, I'll make their weapons useless. And the clans of Judah will say in their hearts, the people of Jerusalem are strong because the Lord Almighty is their God. Why would they say that? Why would the rulers say our people are strong because God is their strength? Why would they say that? What would make them say that?
Trust in God?
But why? Why would they trust in God?
Because he's got a good record with these guys.
Well,
because of who he is, because he's strong.
He's always been strong. He always
Right.
is who he is. But what's going to make them say on that day, God is our strength? Why would they say it on that day? They don't say it right now. You go to Israel right now, ask them what's your strength. It's the Iron Dome missile system. It's the brand new technology it's our world leadership in all kinds of technology. That's where our strength is.
Mm-hmm.
But he says on that day, what are they going to say?
They're going to trust in the Lord.
God is our strength. Why would they say it on that day? They're not saying it today.
Because they turned their hearts to the Lord.
But why would they do that? Why did they turn their hearts to the Lord? Of course they're going to say it because of, but why would they do it?
Because God turned their hearts to the Lord.
Because of what he's going to do to the enemies. He said the enemy is coming for you. If they came for you and you think your strength is your military power or your politics, we just elected a new prime minister. There's our strength. That's what they would say right now. Netanyahu was our strength, but we got rid of him. Now we got another guy, Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
We got all these others that we're putting our trust in. If you ask them today, what is your strength? They will not say, God the Lord is our strength. They'll say, here it is. And they'll list a whole bunch of reasons, and every one of them is what we have done.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they will say God is our strength is because they're going to see what God's going to do to the enemy. The Lord says, on that day, I'm going to blind their horses. I'm going to make their weapons, a great deal of weaponry, modern weaponry, depends on high-tech visibility. Mm-hmm. The computers determine where the target is, and they aim the weapons right at the target. The computer sees the targets. But the Lord said, I'm going to blind their horses.
Uh-huh.
So what will happen to their computers that guide their missiles?
They won't be able to see.
The Lord said, I'm going to blind their missiles. I'm going to blind them so their missiles won't work. And when on the day that happened, it says on that day, so that day is important. The day that they actually come to do all this stuff, the leaders of Judah are going to say from their hearts, this is not just words, it's not political rhetoric, this is from their heart. This is what they really believe. God, the Lord, is our strength, because they're going to see what God has done to their enemies. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
So he says, that was 12, wasn't it?
Yeah, 12. We're on 6 or so.
Yeah. On that day, again he's saying on that day, and think about what day it is. The Lord says, I am, back in verse 2, I'm going to do so. I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup, send the surrounding people reeling. On that day, the day that I do that, and it's the day when all the nations are gathered against her. So when it says they've gathered, they finally, by the way, you look at these 29 nations that are against, are they all in agreement with each other?
About destroying Israel, yes.
That's the only thing they agree about.
Yeah,
what else do they agree about? Nothing.
Nothing.
They fight each other. If they ain't fighting the Israelites, they fight each other, don't they?
Yeah.
But he says, on that day when they're all drawn together against him. Hosea wrote, or Amos wrote, can two walk together unless they be agreed? If these 29 nations are going to be agreed, they have to walk together, don't they? If they're going to walk together, they got to be agreed. But right now, they're not in agreement. But on that day, they will be gathered together, and their gathering will focus on one thing. What?
Destroying Israel.
Destroy Israel. And they're going to come against Israel. And it's called on that day, the day they come against Israel, in total agreement. Today we destroy Israel. In the 6-day war, the Syrians said, we will destroy Israel in 6 hours.
Yeah.
They said, we'll have them done in 6 hours. So it was a 6-day war, and at the end of the 6-day war, they were screaming, help us.
Yeah. They were
screaming,
letting Russia say,
yeah,
you got to make them stop.
Stop this. We got to have a ceasefire.
You got to give the land back that you stole.
The king of Jordan, what is his name?
Now or then?
Back then.
I don't remember.
I'll just say it, but I can't think. Anyway, he made an agreement with Egypt. He turned his military over to the Egyptian rulers. And he screamed after Israel come to the United Nations, said, if you don't stop this, we can't survive one more hour.
Huh.
He cried out to Russia actually
Yeah.
to stop it.
Russia was their voice.
But they were supporting that enemy. So anyway, he says, on that day, and that's the day they all come, then I will blind their weapons, their horses, and then the clans of Judah, or the rulers, will say from their heart, meaning this is a genuine, if you say something from your heart, you really mean it, don't you? This is not just talk. We really mean this. What is our strength, they'll say? We're strong because the Lord Almighty is our God. Now, if they can honestly say that from the heart, something's happening to them, isn't it? That they could say, our strength is because of the Lord our God.
Yeah.
So what the Lord is doing against the enemy, He's also going to make wonderful things among His people, isn't He?
That's right.
Now verse 6 starts again. On that day. What will happen on that day in verse 6?
It says, I will make the leaders of Judah like a fire pot in a wood pile.
Okay, what does that tell you? What happens when you put a fire pot in a wood pile?
It catches everything on fire.
Or like a flaming torch among sheaves, it says.
Yeah. They will consume all the peoples around them on the right and on the left, while Jerusalem continues to be inhabited on its site in Jerusalem.
Who's on the right and on the left?
Enemies.
The enemy nations. But Israel is going to be like a fire pot in a pile of firewood. You throw a fire pot into a pile of wood and you got a fire going, or a flaming torch among the sheaves. Sheaves like grain that's been stacked, you know. You throw a flaming torch in among that and you burn the place down.
Yeah.
But it says the fire will consume what?
All the peoples around them.
And that's the enemies, right?
Yeah.
But Jerusalem will remain intact in her place. That's what this says.
Yeah.
So the fire will burn the enemy, but what will it do to Jerusalem?
It won't destroy them. Won't touch them. Won't hurt them.
Verse 7.
The Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of David's house and the glory of Jerusalem's residents may not be greater than that of Judah.
Okay, now Judah, remember the house of David. David was the king of Judah, wasn't he?
Right.
But he says there is another part of Israel, northern Israel, but he said he's going to first save the house of David, which is Judah. And then, so the others couldn't say we're better than you, you know.
Yeah.
So, verse 8, again, on that day. How many times now has he said on that day, you know?
At least 3.
And it's always the day that the enemy makes their attack. The Lord will shield those who live in Jerusalem, so that the feeblest among them would be like what?
Like David.
Okay, now what was David like?
He was a warrior.
He was a warrior. He was a great soldier, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Powerful. He said the feeblest among the ones in Jerusalem would be like that. So you take some guy that couldn't hardly get off the ground, what will happen to these feeble people?
They're going to be brave and warrior-like.
And why will they be like that? Do you think suddenly all the cripples will be healed instantly?
Do I think that?
Yeah.
It's possible with the Lord.
Is that what it says?
No.
He said on that day, the people will say in their hearts, what are they going to say?
That the Lord is with the people of Jerusalem.
Not that the Lord is with them. That's not what it says. It says our strength is restored, isn't it? So now he talks about somebody, a feeble one, someone who has no strength. The feeblest one among them will be like David. So what is he going to say?
Who?
The one who was feeble, that's now like David.
They're going to be strengthened.
What's he going to say? It says they're saying from their heart something.
That the Lord is our strength.
The Lord's my strength. It's not my feet. It's not. I have not become any stronger than I was when I was laying on mat, feeble. But the Lord's my strength. So my own weakness, what does that do to God?
Magnifies him.
Would you say of yourself that you are like David for strength?
No.
But if the Lord is your strength, then what are you going to say?
I could be like David.
The feeblest among you would
Yeah.
be like that. Somebody who couldn't even get off the ground. He's so
Right.
feeble he can't walk. He's lame. He's crippled. That man will say, my strength is the Lord. Therefore, that makes me like David.
Huh.
So here comes an enemy who wants to destroy me. What is the enemy who wants to destroy me? What's he up against when he comes to the feeblest one in Jerusalem?
Mighty warrior.
He's up against God himself, is he not?
Yeah.
Because the man says, my strength is not my strength, it's the Lord's my strength. You know, when Caleb, Joshua's partner, went back to Israel after the wilderness, he said to Joshua, I want to go back to where the giants were, because my strength today is just like it was back then. What would Caleb say is his strength?
The Lord.
God the Lord is my strength. It is now and it was back then. So he's not going to say, I want to go back where the giants were because I'm a big fighting man.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to say, I want to go back there because the Lord is my strength, and I want to see what the Lord will do to those giants.
People.
So the feeblest guy in Jerusalem, in this Zechariah, when the enemy's coming in and the enemy says, we're going to wipe you off the earth, what will they find when they run up against some poor cripple laying on a mat? What will the enemy find there? A cripple laying on a mat in Jerusalem. He's so feeble he can't even walk. What will the enemy find there?
A bunch of warriors.
A bunch of warriors?
Yeah.
Where do you get that?
Well, if the guys on the mats are going to be warriors, then you're going to find a bunch of
What's
warriors.
the man on the mat going to say?
The Lord's my strength.
So what does the enemy find when he gets there?
The Lord.
He finds the Lord's strength there in that feeble man. That man can't even get off the mat to walk. But the Lord is his strength. So when the enemy comes up against that feeble man, they're going to find a warrior like David. Not in the man, but they're going to be facing right up against God himself, is he not? So could you say exactly the same thing they said? God, the Lord is my strength. So when the enemy comes after me, what's the enemy up against?
The Lord himself.
If he was up against only me, I'm feeble, I can't do anything, I'd have no strength. I would be wiped out. But he's not coming against me, he's coming against the Lord himself. The more we can understand this, the better we're going to see. What is the strength of Israel?
The Lord.
What other strength do they have?
None.
The Lord said, without me, you can do nothing. It doesn't matter how many good weapons you have, how much technology you have, how much you know about everything. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. Without me, you can do nothing. But with me, all things are possible, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So can you see what the Lord's going to do? He's going to give these people an attitude toward God that puts them into the strength of God. So when the enemy comes after them, the enemy is going to find we're not fighting against a bunch of feeble Israelites. We're straight against God himself. You know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
And all that is going to happen on that day. And it says the flaming torch would have burned everything. It's going to burn only the enemy, but Jerusalem will remain intact. And so now it goes on down to verse 10. Oh, wait. Verse 9. Another on that day. What's going to happen on that day?
On that day I will set out to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem.
29 nations are against him.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
It can be destroyed.
Now, we don't know on a calendar what day he's talking about. But according to this, the day is the day they attack. So who established what day it's going to be?
Those leaders of the nations.
The enemy sets the date, doesn't it? The day they attack, all this is going to happen. So it says in Proverbs, you roll a stone, the stone will roll back on you. You dig a pit, you fall into the pit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you dig a pit and then you fall into it, why would you fall into it?
Because that's just what happens.
Who dug the pit?
You did.
You, the enemy, dug the pit. Now you walk right into yourself.
Yeah.
Who decided to walk into the pit?
Yeah, you did.
So when he says on that day that all this destruction is going to happen, the enemy has decided to head into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Their intent is to destroy him,
Yeah,
but they're walking into a
yeah.
trap, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they determine the day.
They determined it. And
The day they decide to attack is their suicide date, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, okay, now you look at, and then he says, on that day I'm going to destroy everything that attacks them. Verse 10.
Then I will pour out a spirit of grace and prayer on the house of David and the residents of Jerusalem, and they will look at me whom they pierced.
Okay.
They will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly for him as one weeps for a firstborn.
Okay. It says, I'm going to pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. What does supplication mean? Yours word is slightly different, but it says the same thing.
Prayer.
Prayer. Supplication is prayer, but it's not just now I lay me down to sleep.
He's asking for something specific.
This is a very it means it's intense. It means it's really meaningful. It's not just a verbalize what a friend of mine called perfunctory prayers. You know, when they have a public meeting, they often got some local preacher to come up and pray for the meeting.
Yeah.
That's done commonly, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost outlawed now that they do it. And that's called a perfunctory prayer. He's praying because he's been called to do that. But a friend of mine who was a preacher said, I do not do perfunctory prayers. So he would refuse that.
Huh.
But a supplication means a real prayer that comes from the heart. Remember, what are they going to say in their heart?
The Lord is their strength.
The Lord's our strength. And now the Lord's going to pour out a spirit of grace and supplication, which means he's going to make their prayers become so meaningful it comes right from their heart. And they're going to pray. And while they're praying, what's going to happen?
They're going to weep.
Why are they going to weep?
It sounds like Yeshua, because they will look on me whom they pierced.
They're going to see something they have never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Israel now and tell them about Yeshua. What do they have to say?
That's just a Gentile God.
Yep. And a fraud. They would say, we don't recognize him. We can't even see any truth in him. But now it says they will see. They will look on the one they pierced. And when they look on him, what are they going to see? If they look at him right now, what do they see? They see a fraud.
Right.
They see a false Messiah. But when they look on him after the Lord has poured out on them a spirit of supplication and grace, now they're going to look at him. What are they going to see then?
And see him for who he truly is.
And they're going to begin to mourn. Why would they be mourning? Why would they mourn?
Because they're going to have a heavy heart for operating in ignorance for what they had done.
Yeah, for what they've done. And it says it's because of what they're mourning. They see him now. This is the one we pierced. And now, of course, when they say this is the one that we pierced and they're mourning, put a word on that. What's the word? What are they doing?
Repenting.
Repenting, exactly. Repenting means to take responsibility for your actions. And if you went over there today and said, the ancient Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, condemned the Lord and sent him to crucifixion, would they agree with that?
No.
Oh, I think they would.
Oh, okay.
But they would add, because that's what he deserved.
Oh.
So they were doing the right thing. They did condemn him. But now, when they see, they will look on him whom they pierced, and they will mourn instead of denying it or trying to say that he deserved it. What's happened to their viewpoint of it?
They're owning it now.
They're saying, we did this, And why are they mourning? Why are they mourning about it? They didn't. If they ask them now, yeah, did they crucify Yeshua? Yeah, we did, because you deserve. Are they mourning right now?
Now they're saying he deserved it.
Yeah. In fact, they're throwing stones at him, aren't they?
Yeah.
But they will mourn for him, and they'll say, because of what we did. And how sincere is their mourning?
Sincere.
How sincere?
Straight from the heart.
How do you know that?
Because that's where true repentance comes from.
Well, it explains right there in your verse why they will mourn like that.
Because of the spirit of grace and supplication.
Well, that's what will bring it on, but what determines how sincere they are?
Breaking of their stubbornness and
No, that's not what it says. Read it.
I've already read it.
No, you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
Read it.
That I will pour out a spirit of grace and prayer on the house of David and the residents of Jerusalem, and they will look at me whom they pierced. They will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child.
Okay. What determines how sincere they are? It just said they were going to mourn for him like they would for if you lost your child.
Mm-hmm.
If one of your children, little Evie, suddenly was killed, would you mourn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that was one of our kids. Sorry, she died. Too bad. Is that what you'd say?
No.
You'd be mourning for her like you poured your whole life into it. That's what tells you how sincere you are. Because of the love you had for that child and lost it, that's what brings the grief. When he said they'll mourn for him like for an only son, you couldn't get any more sincere mourning than that, could you?
Right.
Because they're mourning for one that they lost who was their son. Now, one of the titles of the Lord is the Son of Man.
Mm-hmm.
So could you say in that kind of an idea that he is the son of Israel?
Mm-hmm.
And they're mourning for him as their only son. Their son died. Now, in order to even mourn that way, they're going to have to recognize him in a different way. If you ask the Israelites today, was Yeshua the son of Israel, what would they say?
I'd say no.
No, he's a fraud. He's a Gentiles guy. He's probably an Italian. He's from the Vatican.
Yeah.
But in order for them to mourn for him as an only son, they're going to have to recognize him in a different way. They're going to recognize he really is the one who came for us. Mm-hmm. He is our son.
He's Jewish. He's
so
one of us.
Their attitude completely has changed, and it's changed because of the grace and supplication that's poured out from the Lord on them. So could you say then that Israel is going to have a major change of heart? And what day is it going to happen?
On that day.
On that day. And what day is that?
The day that the enemy decides.
The day the enemy attacks. That's going to be radical changes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go a little further. 11 starts, on that day.
On that day, the mourning in Jerusalem will be as great as the mourning of Hadid Rimmon on the plain of Megiddo.
You know what that's about?
No.
One of the ancient kings, I think it was Josiah, one of those, was murdered in that place. And they mourned for him. They were so broken. So that would be a sort of a milestone in Israel's history of mourning for different ones. You could look that one up sometime. The weeping of Hadad Rimmon and the plain of Megiddo. Megiddo, you know, the Jezreel Valley. And this king was murdered over there, and the people mourned for him. And I mean, it really broke up the nation. So now in Jerusalem, it would be like that. And of course, if you asked any Israelite who knows about this, they would tell you that was one of the saddest days in their history. Verse 12.
The land will mourn, every family by itself, the family of David's house by itself, and their women by themselves, the family of Nathan's house by itself, and their women by themselves, the family of Levi's house by itself, and their women by themselves,
What's
family
that got to do with anything? They're weeping all by themselves.
I could see it in a couple different ways. Like, one thing is, sometimes when you mourn, you want to go off and be by yourself. But then it could also mean that they arrived at this mournfulness and their repentance independently.
I think you're right, exactly. You know, we have a say, don't go along with the crowd.
Yeah.
The crowd say, okay, today we're going to mourn today. Okay,
Yeah.
we're all going to mourn.
Catches on, and
We're all mourning because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But these are each one separate, all by themselves. Each one, their own attitude toward God is changing.
And it's not subtle.
It brings it down to personal things, doesn't it?
And whatever they say by themselves, a lot of times it's emphasis on that.
Yeah, so here's one family is mourning. Why are they mourning? Because they realize we crucified the one that was our son.
Mm-hmm.
And they're repenting. And down the street, another family doing the same thing. You ask them, why are you doing it? Are we doing it because this family's doing it? No, we're doing it. This is all our thing.
Mm-hmm.
All over the whole nation. They're weeping everywhere. So
Family is Shimei by itself, and the women by themselves. All
Yeah.
the remaining families, every family by itself, and the women by themselves.
So this is a very personal thing, and they're really genuinely receiving this.
Yeah.
Verse 13:1, another one on that day.
On that day, a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the residents of Jerusalem, to wash away sin and impurity.
What's the fountain that washes away sin?
Yeshua.
Yes. He is the wellspring of living water, the cleansing blood, right?
Yes.
And that fountain will be open to the house of David and the house of Jerusalem. What's going to happen to these people?
They're going through a major change.
If you read this passage to an Israelite today, that would confuse a lot of folks, wouldn't it? It wouldn't have to do with that.
Yeah, because it sounds a lot like Christian baptism.
Yeah, well, it's the fact of the Lord Himself taking away sin.
Yeah.
Verse 2, another on that day, right?
On that day, this is the declaration of the Lord of hosts. I will erase the names of the idols from the land, and they will no longer be remembered.
Okay, has Israel got any idols?
Oh, yeah.
What about the rest of the world? Has the so-called Christianity got any idols?
Yes.
It's full of them.
Yeah.
But He said, I'm going to eradicate them. Even the names will no longer be remembered. Right now, you could take something away, but it's kind of hard to forget things, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for us to imagine. In fact, according to anybody who understands mental powers, it's almost impossible to forget anything.
Yeah.
You might not remember it momentarily, but it'll come back sooner or later. But He says, I'm going to wipe the whole memory of it all off.
Yeah.
So when He cleans something, He really cleans it. The next verse says, I'm going to remove both the prophet and the spirit of impurity. What's the prophets? Not going to have any prophets anymore?
That's what it says.
So Zechariah was a prophet going to wipe Zechariah away too?
I think you might be talking about false prophets.
False prophets. I'm going to get rid of that. And if anybody still prophesies, if somebody keep on doing it, they insist on it, what's going to happen then?
Do you need to look at that?
I don't know. I think he's buzzing. Let's see what it says.
You got about 3 on there.
Well, this is Tommy saying about what we read about the situation down. Somebody says sorry to hear for different people praying for that. Yeah.
And you had a couple more too, if you want to check those.
Yeah. No reasons. I don't. Oh well.
You want me to drive it for you for a sec?
Yes.
Does it look like there was something from Alice?
I think she was probably answering Tommy's thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For some reason it comes through.
Okay, that's the Tommy thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you might be right. Yeah,
Yeah, they're just
A bunch of people chimed in on that.
Yeah, I think it's just about her.
All right.
Okay, let's shut that off then. Okay,
Well,
so
what do I mean?
he says,
If a man still prophesies, his father and his mother who bore him will say to him, "You cannot remain alive because you have spoken falsely in the name of Yahweh."
okay, so obviously when he's talking about removing the prophets,
He's talking about
prophets,
false
right?
ones, yeah.
Right now, many of the rabbis are false prophets, aren't they?
Yeah.
Not all of them. There are a lot of good ones, but there are some that are false. And they're the ones who are denying the Lord, aren't they?
Yeah.
So he says, if anybody keeps doing that, their father and mother.
Who bore him
What does that tell you?
means that people are gonna side with the Lord instead of their own family.
Yeah. And for a father and mother to turn against their own son means there has to be something really real to them to do that, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
So they're going to recognize this. He was our son, but he's a false prophet. And we're going to shut him up because he's so evil. Verse 5.
He will say, "I am not a prophet."
Oh, we forgot 4.
Okay.
4.
Who bore him will pierce him through. On that day, every prophet will be ashamed of his vision when he prophesies. They will not put on a hairy cloak in order to deceive. He will say, "I am not a prophet. I worked the land, for a man purchased me as a servant since my youth."
Okay. He said, I'm just a farmer.
Yeah.
So, because if I acknowledge that I'm a prophet, what's going to happen?
Gonna get pierced through.
They're going to kill me because right now prophets are regarded as false. And now, of course, he's not talking about true prophets here, but he's talking about the false ones. If they are actually doing that, if someone continues to prophesy, do you think they will continue to prophesy?
No, they're gonna go in the underground.
He said, if they do,
They're gonna be pierced through.
well, then will they?
No.
Yes, they will. Because he said, what if they do? Here's what'll happen.
Yeah.
So
So they're gonna continue. In
Somebody's going to keep on the false prophet, but their own family is going to disown them, and it's going to be such a frightening thing for them. They'll say, "I'm not a prophet. Don't blame me. I'm a farmer. Never been anything but a farmer."
Yeah.
Because of fear. Why? That's why he would say that. Can you imagine a Pharisee like one of the ancient ones, Caiaphas, saying, "Don't blame. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a rabbi. I'm just a businessman. So don't throw a rock at me."
Yeah.
Fear will make him say that. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a farmer. And so, look at verse 6 is a strange one.
If someone asks him, "What are these wounds on your chest?" he will then answer, "I received the wounds in the house of my friends."
What are these wounds? Why would there be wounds on them?
I don't know. The
Well-
only thing I could think of would be, what do you call them? Aesthetics? No.
Well, look at this.
Who
The
beat
false
themselves.
prophets are going to say, "I'm not a prophet." So, you're looking for false. I'm not a prophet. Don't blame me. I'm not a prophet. I'm a farmer. And then verse 5 says, each one will say, "I'm not a prophet." So I'm not the one you're looking for. You're going to kill the false prophet. Not me. I'm innocent. I'm just
I'm not
a
your
farmer.
guy.
And then someone's going to say, "Well, what's these wounds on you? Why would he have wounds?"
Maybe they've already started piercing him.
Somebody started throwing stones at him, didn't they?
Yeah.
And so they're going to say, "Well, what's these wounds?" That was in answer to his claim, "I'm not a prophet."
Uh-huh.
Then how come you're wounded? We're wounding false prophets. And he will say, what's his answer to the question?
I got him in the house of my friends.
Why would my friends be throwing stones at me and wounding me?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, they were
Maybe
my friends,
He's
but
trying to arouse.
they found out I was a
Pity
false
on him?
prophet. So they started throwing stones at me.
But they wouldn't say that, would they? They wouldn't. That'd be like admitting it.
Well, he said, no, he didn't say that it was my enemies who did it. It was my friends that did this. I got these wounds. Because that was the answer to their question. You claim to not be a prophet, but you got wounds on you. How come? Well, my friends did this to me. Kind of a dumb answer when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a method of trying to escape persecution because, remember, all this is going to happen on that day.
On that day.
So the day the enemy, it all sets back to the day these 29 nations attack. A lot of stuff's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Major changes. The whole nation of Israel are going to change their view of who Yeshua is. They're going to mourn for him. The false prophets are going to be put down. The false prophets who are being accused are going to try to defend themselves with more lies. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a farmer. Well, where's these wounds come? Well, my friends did this to me. I mean, it's just one crazy thing after another. But it's all going to happen on that day, isn't it? Now you look at this next one, it says the shepherd struck, the sheep scattered. The minute you read that, what comes to mind?
The words of Yeshua.
So what did he say?
He said he mourned about this, didn't he?
Oh,
How
yeah.
Jerusalem looked like a bunch of sheep whose shepherd has been
He
smote.
also speaks of his own disciples. They came after Yeshua. Which way did the disciples go? They all ran in fear, didn't they?
Yeah.
Let's read that one. Now we're at verse 7.
Sword awake against my shepherd, against the man who is my associate. This is the declaration of the Lord of hosts.
Okay. So the Lord says this. Who is the man close to me?
He's talking about Yeshua?
Yeshua. My shepherd, isn't that the one?
Yeah.
Awake, sword, against my shepherd, against the man who's close to me. This is what the Lord says.
Strike
Okay.
the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. I will also turn my hand against the little ones in the whole land. This is the Lord's declaration. 2/3 will be cut off and die, but 1/3 will be left in it. I will put 1/3 through the fire. I will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested.
Okay, just a minute now. Okay, you strike the shepherd. Has the shepherd been struck?
You talk about for us or for?
Well, he said, strike the
Zechariah.
shepherd. Has he been struck?
Yeah,
Yes. So what happened to the sheep?
scattered.
Now he says, I'm going to turn my hand against the little ones. Now that's sort of strange. Another place, the Lord said, let the little ones come to me. This is what the kingdom is made of.
Yeah.
But not all the little ones. There are little ones who are little rattlesnakes, aren't you saying? I'm going to turn my hand
true.
against them. And he said, 2/3 of them will be struck down and perish. He said, in the whole land. So, everywhere the Lord's people are, 2/3 will be struck down and perish, but 1/3 will be left in it. Who are the third that's left when 2/3 perish?
I don't know what to say. Just the the faithful ones, the survivors, the ones who had a good helping of the coverage of
Yeah.
the Lord.
Remember how this all started? They were going to say on that day, the Lord is our strength. They're going to put their confidence in the Lord. Great things are going to happen. But he said a lot of people are going to be scattered and they're going to perish because not every single one would declare that. There will be those who are, you look at American Jews, for example. How do most of them vote?
To the left.
Why? Why did they do that? What has the left ever done for them? Doesn't do anything for them.
No,
And yet they vote for him. Why?
because the vision of the leftists is that their ideology is helping people.
Okay, use the word vision.
Yeah.
So their vision is blinded. They don't
Yeah.
see where the truth really is. The Lord says, if you know the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
But they don't know the truth because they
Right.
can't recognize the truth. So it says, on that day they will look on the one they'll pierce and they'll mourn for him. So the ones who did not see him before will see him, but not every one, because he said 2/3 of them are going to perish. Only 1/3 would be surviving. And so he says 1/3 will be left, and that third, look at the next verse here, verse 9. What's going to happen to that third?
Put a third through the fire and refine them as silver is refined, and
Yeah.
test them as gold is tested.
How do you refine silver and gold?
Put it to the fire.
What does that accomplish? What does it do?
It enables the goldsmith to separate the bad stuff from
So
the
the
pure
impurities
stuff.
come out of it,
Yeah.
right? So he said, I'm going to purify my people. So he said, who's he going to do that for?
For Judah and Israel.
Well, it said right there which ones are going to be purified.
That last third.
The third that are surviving. 2/3 are not going to be purified, but the third that is going to be purified. And then they will call on my name, and I will answer him. And what will I say?
They are my people, and they will say, Yahweh is our God.
All right? So, is he talking about Israel as it is right today?
Well, it's going to be that day,
Yeah, not today.
not today.
That day. And what day is that day?
The day that the enemy turns against.
Yes. Right now, the enemy's threatening. We read about every day's news. The threats are always there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Continuously. We are going to wipe Israel off the map, but they haven't done it yet. They fire rockets at them. When they fire rockets at Israel responds by blowing up a bunch of their stuff. So there are attacks, but they are not to the point of saying we're going to wipe you off the earth. They're saying it, but they're not doing it, are they?
Right.
As a matter of fact, when they attack Israel, how much of Israel gets wiped off the earth? Not much. A school bus,
Yeah.
a car or two, a building or something, maybe a few people die. But you could hardly say Israel's wiped off the map. The day they're going to attack, they're going to do that today. They're going to be like Syria said of Israel, we're going to destroy you in 6 hours.
Yeah.
They're coming today to do it, not today, but on that day. But on that day, what are they going to do? These people, the 1/3 has been purified. What are they going to do on that day? This verse,
Call on God's name.
yes. He said, they're going to call on me. There's a place in the Lord said, they that call on the Lord will be saved. Is that right?
Right.
And he said, I will say, I'll answer them when they call on my name. And what will he say? What will the Lord answer them?
They are my people. And
Yeah. Remember when John 1 said, he came to his own did not receive him. But those that did receive him, what happened?
He let them be called children of God.
Yes. So he said, 2/3 rejected him, but 1/3. Now, these are probably not to be taken literal amounts, but they're given the idea. The bigger percentage of them would not receive him. But there are those who would receive him, and he's going to purify them. By the way, once something's been purified, what kind of shape's it in?
Better shape than it was.
How much better?
Well,
Better's not a good word. Better is relative.
yeah.
It's not better than what it was. It's
Pure.
pure.
It's pure and unadulterated.
But the other is polluted.
Yeah.
So pure is not better than polluted. Pure is infinitely greater than polluted, isn't
Yeah.
it? You can't say it's better. It could be a little bit better, and then you'd call it better, but that's not what it is. Pure is pure. Polluted is polluted. So he says, when that happens, I'm going to refine them, and then they'll call on my name, and I'll answer them. They are my people. So what kind of shape are they in when he says they are my people?
They're in great shape now.
How great?
They are possessed by God.
They've been purified, haven't they?
Yeah.
And then they will say what?
That He is our God. God is our God.
Okay. Now 14 starts. It doesn't say on that day. What does 14 say?
The day of the Lord is coming.
A day is coming. And what is the name of the day?
The day.
Well,
Day of the Lord.
It'll be called that day, right?
Yeah.
And so here comes the day. And so what's going to happen?
Okay. Hold on a sec. Okay.
Is this boring?
No.
Okay, verse 14. Or verse
The day of the Lord is coming when your plunder will be divided in your presence. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem for battle. The city will be captured, the houses looted, and the women raped. Half the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be removed from the city.
Okay. Now, this says the nations of the enemy are going to come and fight against it, and they're going to capture it and wreck the place, right?
Right.
It says half the city will go into exile. That doesn't sound too good, does it?
No, it doesn't.
But the rest of the people, what?
Will not be removed from the city.
And then what will happen?
Keep reading.
Yeah.
Then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as He fights on the day of battle.
Okay, if the Lord goes out to fight like He would on a battle, what's going to happen?
The enemies are going to fall.
Okay, in verse 4, we're back to on that day, right?
On that day, His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. The Mount of Olives will be split in half from east to west, forming a huge valley, so that half the mountain will move to the north and half to the south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for the valley of the mountains will extend to us all. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with Him.
Okay, is there going to be a battle?
It sounds like there's going to be a rescue.
Is there going to be a battle?
I don't think it said there was yet.
What does verse 3 say?
The Lord will go fight against those nations as He fights on the day of battle. So yeah, there is a battle.
Okay, but
it's kind of one-sided though.
The ones that recognize God, what are they going to say from their hearts?
He is our God.
He's our strength.
Yeah.
So now He's gone out to fight. Who's He fighting?
All the enemies that come up against His people.
The ones that were wanting to destroy Israel. Now they're going to attack. The city will be captured, it says. The houses ransacked, the women raped. Doesn't sound too good, does it?
No.
Does it mean that all of Israel will be destroyed?
No.
But some will, because it said half the city will go into exile. Now again, these terms like half and thirds, 2/3, 1/3, half, probably not to be taken literally, but lets you know that there is a great amount that's just going to happen to you. And there will be, the rest of the people won't be taken. If the enemy takes the people from the city, what do they do with them?
Take them into exile.
Yeah. I don't know who's coming. Alicia White. You want to talk to her?
Hey, baby. Hey, what's up? Okay, not an emergency.
Okay.
Okay, baby. Will do. Love you too. Bye. I gotta go get tomatoes.
Before you go home.
Yeah, before I go home.
Okay. So he says, on that day, and that's the day that the enemy comes in, attacks Israel, and destroys part of it, takes half the people into exile, right?
Yeah.
Now, but then he says, verse 3 begins with the word then. So what does the word then mean?
It's the next in line.
Or at that point in time.
Yeah.
So when does the Lord go into action?
That day.
Well, exactly when. It's narrowed down. It's in verse 2.
When he gathers the nations against Jerusalem for battle.
Well, yeah, they come and they're coming in, and what are the enemy going to do then in verse 2?
They're going to rape and pillage and take half into exile.
All right. Then, at that exact point, what does the Lord? Then the Lord goes out and fights against them.
Fight back, yeah.
As he fights on a day of battle. Remember, one time when we read about the Lord fighting on a day of battle, when David said to Goliath, "My God that you are against is going to destroy you."
Yeah, and he did.
So that moment, within a minute or two after David said that, Goliath was dead, wasn't he?
Right.
So the day or that point when these enemies are capturing Israel, and as the enemies is pillaging the place, they're ransacking, they're raping the women, taking people in. What does the enemy think at that time?
That they've won a precise battle.
We're winning, and we're going to finish. We've got half of them now. We're going to take the rest of them too. But he says at that exact point, the Lord moves in to fight against them. Now, verse 4 again, on that day.
On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives.
Okay, what's the Mount of Olives? You know, that's a very, very important promontory around Jerusalem. Everybody in Israel knows where the Mount of Olives is. Just east of the main old city. It's where the Lord himself often camped at night, where he was arrested and so on, where he prayed at this place called Gethsemane. And it says it'll split in two. I don't know whether you would be taking that literally as a geographic action or not. But whatever the Mount of Olives does, if it's split in two, then suddenly we have two Mount of Olives, don't we?
Yeah.
With a valley in between them.
Yeah, and the valley gets bigger.
Every time you have two of anything, and you're regarding the two, what do you have to do?
Make a decision.
Which one am I going to be part of, right? So he says there's going to be a valley between them. When there's a valley between things, it means there's a space. He says half of it will move north and half will move south. South generally refers to evil things. North refers to the Lord is in the sides of the north, it's called. So when it says Abraham went south, he went to Egypt for his own personal safety, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's indicating things are going wrong. He says you'll flee by the mountain valley. So in between these two mountains, there are two parts, is this valley, and that's where you'll find safety. It'll extend to Azel. You know what the word Azel means?
No.
It means the strength of God.
Okay.
The strength of God. What did the people say from their hearts?
That the Lord is their strength.
The Lord's our strength. So the ones that have not been taken captive here, now they're going to run through this valley that goes between these two to a place called the strength of God.
Yeah.
So where are they going to flee? Where are they going to get their protection?
From the strength of God.
Yeah. It says you'll flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah. So obviously there was a great earthquake back then. People ran from it in terror. At that point, now what are they doing right then? When it says there, you'll flee as you fled from the earth. What are the people doing at that exact moment?
Trying to get away from the enemy?
Yes. And it's strange because the Lord is fighting a battle. The mountain is split, sort of forcing you to choose between one or the other, and you're running through this valley between them to a place that calls the strength of God. And you're going to run. Are you going to be afraid while you're running?
Well, yeah, that's why people run.
Yeah, why did they run from the earthquake? Same reason, of fear. But they're running to something called the strength of God. So when you are afraid, what should you do?
Turn to the Lord.
Run to the strength of God, right?
Yeah.
That's where you're to go to. If you go anywhere else, what are you going to get for it?
You're going to cash in on your fear.
That's right. So you run to the strength of God. And then it says, then, at that moment, while the people are running from the split mountain, but they're running, and which happens as the battle for the city is going on, the people are running in fear. And then what will happen?
The Lord will come and all his holy ones with him.
So what is that talking about?
Is he talking about angels? Or he talking about his people?
Okay. And what would we put a title on that? The Lord will come on that day. What's the title of the day?
What, that day?
Yes.
The day when the enemies rise up?
It's not what it's referring about. So the Lord will come. How about calling it the day of the second coming of the Lord?
Yeah, yeah.
Verse 6 says, on that day. What will happen on that day?
There will be no light.
Doesn't say there'll be no light. What
6 does.
That's not what mine says. It said there will be neither sunlight or frosty darkness.
It says that day will be no light. The sunlight and moonlight will diminish.
Okay. So there won't be day and night.
Yeah.
Look at verse 7.
It will be a day known only to Yahweh without day or night, but there
Okay.
will be light at evening.
Right now, how do we know whether it's day or light or night? Or we got sunlight or not?
Right.
But he said there won't be any light or darkness because there won't be any cold or heat or anything. It'll be a very unique day. It's a day known only to the Lord. Remember, somebody asked the Lord one time, when are you going to establish your kingdom? He said, the day is not for you to determine. It's known only to the Father. So only God knows it. There will be no distinction between day and night. Right now, the distinction between day and night is sunshine or not, isn't it? But in that day, it'll be a very different day. There will be no distinction between day and night. It says when evening comes, there will be no light. So when it's dark, there will be no light. But it's been a very unusual day, right?
Right.
The normal way that we determine whether it's day or night.